Internet, I'm Chris, and this is the place on the internet where I talk about comics, movies, games, and things I'm generally passionate about. So today we're talking about Beyond the Spider-Verse, the animated movie starring Miles Morales that you should have seen about 6 months ago. The movie was indefinitely postponed, delayed, canceled, and we haven't heard much about it outside of the fact that after Across the Spider-Verse came out to much critical and commercial success, it was found that the production of that film was marred with changing of plans, tough schedules, animators forced to crunch, something we're all too familiar with if you follow video games and crunch and how animation works. It's a really difficult and long process. So we're getting this news from Jeff Snyder, the insider, who has a newsletter. After the news dropped today that Daniel Destin Cretton, who directed Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings, will be directing Spider-Man 4. So that is on the fast track. We should be getting it by 2026 because they're going to start shooting that early next year. But we haven't heard about Across the Spider-Verse or Beyond the Spider-Verse. Beyond the Spider-Verse. So Beyond the Spider-Verse is kind of weird. We're supposed to get this movie. The second movie ended on a crazy cliffhanger that most fans were like okay with. Well, not so okay with, but they were okay with. They're like, all right, I'm going to get an answer to this in about a year, year and a half, maybe a few months, depending on, I forget when the release date was, when it initially came out. I think it was 6 months. And before they changed the name, it was a part one and part two. So initially, everyone knew sort of the story would be split into two, and we know it's, crescendoing to an epic finale as we saw Miles meet a Prowler Miles, and it was probably one of the great endings in superhero and comic book movie history. And it seems like Sony could not have a good thing. So if you know Sony, who produces the Spider-Man movies, they have owned the rights for close to 30 years at this point. They make the Spider-Man films, the live-action films, in collaboration with Marvel Studios, which is why the home trilogy with Zendaya and Tom Holland has been actually really good. But they have also made Morbius.
Time to die! No, it's morbid time. Oh shit!
Madam Web, soon to come Craven the Hunter, and Venom. I do like the Venom movies, but it is clear that they are really bad at making superhero movies. They keep getting in their own way, and it seems like the fact that this movie, as reported by Jeff Snyder, that it is being creatively scrapped, and I don't really know how something that is a part two of something could be creatively scrapped or redirected this late in the game, but that's where we're at, and that's where Sony's at. So it is weird, but also they've had issues with the producers of the film, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, famous for the Lego movie and also the Jump Street films, who seem to have cut their deal short with Sony. They've tried to get some live action series off the ground. The Spider-Man Noir series with Nicolas Cage is at Amazon. That's happening, but I know Silk has been in and out of development hell over the last few years. It's just crazy. The Spider-Verse movies have catapulted Miles Morales to a new level of popularity, has put him on the level of a Peter Parker, I think, when it comes to kids. If I have a 5-year-old, he is just as in tune with Miles as he is with Peter because of the Spider-Man games, also Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and wouldn't you know it, the Spider-Verse movies. So it's pretty insane that Sony would take something like the Spider-Verse movies, which is the only good thing they have going when it comes to, I would say, like any blockbuster films. I can't think of any successful franchise they have going right now. I consider the Spider-Man live action movies more of a Marvel Studios production than a Sony production. And to see them sort of see like the success of that and be like, instead of being like, hey, let's leave that alone, let's nurture that, let's figure out how we can support that, they're like, you know what, let's scrap all those plans and, start fresh. Now, in the report, it's saying that they are giving the animators time, that they're pushing it to 2027, which would be nuts. That would be 4 years before we get an answer about the ending of that film, which I think is crazy and speaks to where we're at in terms of the entertainment industry. And I think part of why people aren't generally happy, whether it be people working in the industry and also people that are consuming it. Like, hey, like seasons of TV take a really long time. We're getting less of it. And things like Spider-Verse, which was initially said to have a short window between films, you have a 4-year wait when you leave a cliffhanger like that. By the time that movie happens, the kids that grew up on that film are going to be in a different age and might not even be into Spider-Man anymore. That's kind of exaggerating. But, 4 years is a long time for something to follow up that kind of cliffhanger. But again, Sony is in a weird place where they seem to always trip over themselves and just can't have a good thing going, outside of the Venom movies. They're great. But yeah, I just don't know what they're going to do. I feel bad for the creatives, and I think Lord and Miller have obviously done a lot for Sony. They made the Jump Street movies, which should not have been successful. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. And I think the work that the Spider-Verse team has done has changed what people think about animation. They've really elevated it, and also I think opened people's eyes to, hey, like maybe instead of a live action movie, we can do something really ambitious with an animated film. So I think it's opened the doors in terms of the types of comic book adaptations we get. As we've seen, since then, not to say that it's directly influenced, but we've got Invincible, we've got a Witches animated series coming, Creature Commandos is coming out soon, and hopefully we see some really cool animated movies coming out of both Marvel and DC. But yeah, it sucks. I hope that we get it sooner and I don't have to wait, 4 years between movies that should have been, 2-3 years. But yeah, what do you guys think? Let me know. Peace.